Welcome back, everyone. Uh, as promised, we are back for a second episode for the aftermath of Le Mans, together with Ed. So sit back, relax, and join the club. So, Ed, how are you after the past weekend?
I'm surprisingly refreshed. It was a very good Le Mans 24 hours, and it was one that definitely kept you on the edge of your seat. I think everyone was intrigued to see how the Ferrari-Toyota battle was going to go, but for most of the race, it was very much anyone's. Le Mans, you had Peugeot in there, you had Porsche in there. I think there was even a threat that even Jota could win the race. So, yeah, feeling very refreshed, very relaxed, and it definitely seems like the hype has really taken over sports cars now. Everyone is talking about it, and it's incredible to think that a year ago, the hypercar era was just only slowly starting up. Now it's just gone. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's super crazy. How a difference can make just in a few races. It's crazy.
Exactly.
So, let's get straight into it. Of course, before the 24 hours of Le Mans, they also need to do a quali. And we saw Ferrari taking the pole and also second. This was obviously not what everyone expected, since we all expected the Toyotas to be in front. So at least from my side, I got super hyped and excited for the race, hoping for a crazy battle, and if we could dream even more, a Ferrari win. What was your feeling after that quali?
Well, I thought, qualifying doesn't really mean as much as, let's say, in Formula One in Le Mans. It's a big part of the race weekend, but obviously, I think everyone still expected a little bit more from Toyota. I think there was a feeling that maybe Ferrari had shown their cards a little bit, but it was a great session. It was really close between the 50 and the 51, and then we had the Toyotas. A lot of drama with the fact that the free Cadillac didn't get round to complete its lap and lost its best time, so that put that on the back foot. But I think I think there was an element of surprise because we all deep down thought Toyota were going to get pole, and then to see a Ferrari front row lockout was like, oh, okay. It was a shock, but it was a great it was a great
shock.
It was a great shot, but it was a great appetizer for Saturday's race, and I think it added that extra element of interest and speculation. Oh, could Ferrari really do it? What's going to be the strategy to beat Toyota? And of course, Porsche were there in the middle of it, and there was a few penalties there or thereabouts. So yeah, it was a really good session. I think the hype of pole format definitely works.
For sports car, this is really the way to go. And yeah, especially as you said, you just got super excited about what might happen. So that was nice. We got bummed out real quick though once the race started, because after the start, Toyota came kinda immediately to the front in the same lap. Cadillac's Jack 8 can also crashed, which caused a long safety car period. So that was a bit of a bummer of the start of the race. Can you give us a rundown on how the race went after that?
Well, it was very much a case that Ferrari were on the back foot, but the big surprise was the Jota Porsche, which had started 60th on the grid, which is third last almost, and it was in the lead for a good chunk of the race. And then Yiffy made a mistake coming out of karting, I believe, on the run down to karting, I should say, and he smashed the car up. There was also rain. The free Cadillac had a spin. There was all sorts of cars going off on the run down to Porsche, or the Porsche curves. Peugeot briefly led, which was a big shock considering Peugeot have not looked once likely to lead a race this year. The 311 did get back into the fight, but was about 16 laps down, so they had it all to do. And then, as the race went on, it started to slowly settle down, but at the time it was Peugeot who were leading, which no one had anticipated. If you'd said Peugeot were going to lead Le Mans, I think a few people would have looked and wondered, were you employed by them? Because they didn't. And there were people in the garage taking photos of them leading Le Mans. So when you've got people in the garage, when people even in the garage were shocked that, oh God, we're leading. You know, it was a big surprise. And then as we went into the night, Ferrari started to close in. The rain did come, but wasn't as heavy. But then we had late drama into the night. The number 7 car, correct me if I'm wrong, the number 7 car had got involved in an accident with the LMP2. That took them out of the race, and it really started to become a 2-horse race between the 51 Ferrari, which had been in the gravel trap itself. Pierre Guidi had stuck it in the gravel and had to be trained out, versus the 8 Toyota of Hartley and Buemi. So that set up a really good duel for the morning.
Yeah, and I think also didn't the number 50 Ferrari had a water leak or something? Because they were for a long time in the garage. So yeah, they got set back in the standings quite a bit. Caused that they got lapped by Ferrari and the Toyota, the leading Ferrari and the Toyota. And yeah, I still remember that they were just constantly still fighting with the Toyota. Not that they were going for position, but just to annoy them and force them into a mistake just to help the leading 51, which was kind of nice to see in my opinion.
It was nice. It was nice to see a little bit of team tactics come into play, but yeah, it was what you would expect. They had to use the 50 car for a little bit of help. I think when you've got 2 cars, and one's not fighting for the win, you might as well use it. And this, of course, played against Toyota because they had 1 car out, so they were fighting not just the 51, they were also trying to get through the 50. Without causing too much damage, so that added that extra element of team tactics into the race.
Yeah, because eventually the Toyota had everything to lose, given the past years, and Ferrari had just everything to win. So why wouldn't you go crazy and try everything you can?
Yeah, might as well. They had nothing to really lose. I mean, it was their titles at stake, and they were struggling. They were struggling to keep up, and Hartley was overdriving the car at times, which obviously led up to Hirakawa's mistake.
Yeah, as I experienced it, it was like the Toyota was kind of panicking the whole time, that they were a bit falling behind and had to fight with the Ferrari instead of just smooth sailing as they always had to do. And on the other hand, for Ferrari, it felt like they were just confident despite some small errors, like for example the 2 times at the end of the race that they couldn't fire up the car in the pits. They were still calm, confident, they came back, went through and eventually won. So
yeah,
they were the rock stars of the weekend.
Yeah, I think we all saw that stop and thought, oh no, this is gonna be this is how it's gonna end, all fall apart, and they just got him. They just got it out in time. I'd even tweeted, oh, it'll just be a quick stop, fuel, tyres, and it stuck. It's like, guys, you've got a race to win. The Toyota's gaining.
Yeah.
But that was.
I was so stressed in that moment.
I think
the last pit stop. What was it? An hour before the end. I was like, oh my god, no, this is not gonna happen.
It was just
Please,
like
start.
It just got going. I think they probably had. It definitely seemed like they had an electrical issue, which took a little bit of time to figuring out. But I think they had a big enough. It's a good thing they had a big enough buffer, because if they didn't, well, that would have been a horrific way to lose a race.
That's very true. It would also go down in history, but just in the bad sense of the word.
Yeah, just a bit.
Do you think that, of course, they already solved a lot of issues that they had, reliability-wise, and they now got actually very lucky with this issue that occurred twice. But maybe, do you think that it might be not so lucky in the coming races?
I think it's definitely something to look back on and think, okay, well, how do we fix it? Because, the races are going to be much shorter and much less punishing on the cars, but of course, when you have that issue happening again, it is concern. So they need to get that fixed for the remaining section of the season. I mean, Monza's next up. That's home ground. There's probably going to be a bumper crowd, maybe even a sellout. At this rate, you know,
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
suspect.
going to be a sellout. It probably will be, because it's decent ticket prices and the home team is coming in as the Le Mans winner. So you don't want to disappoint the Tifosi, who are starved of success in Formula One, who are going to come out to Monza to cheer you on. You don't want your cars to break down with electrical issues. So it's something that needs to be fixed. But luckily they have about 3 or 4 weeks to get it done. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I got to say that before Le Mans even, since they were the only ones, Ferrari-wise then, that they were the only ones that they could really make it hard for Toyota in the coming races, and also for Le Mans, of course, since they were closest in terms of pace. So yeah, somehow I was like, oh, I really hope they get it right, since they are probably the most historical name in racing anyway. But just because of all the Formula One shit from the past years, the hope was not very very big. But now I just have to go all in the Ferrari hypercar hype. I just have to.
Yeah, it was like, oh no. But yeah, they got it done in the end, and it was a very famous victory.
Yeah, it was just, I think, didn't we all just had goosebumps when they were about to finish and after the finish? Because everyone was just looking in silence during the last lap from, oh, they're actually gonna do it. Even other teams. And yeah, just all the respect that they got after that, it was crazy. I think it would be a completely different atmosphere after the race if Toyota had won, for example.
I think it would have been a little bit. I think with Ferrari winning, it was that element of surprise, but also that element of, you know, this is over 58 years in the making, and they're going to do it on their first go back in the top class. And it was a very special moment. If Toyota had won, I still think people would have realised the enormity of it, because it would have been 6 on the bounce. It would have been an amazing achievement, because I think the only manufacturer that really came close to achieving that level of success was Audi. And to do that would have been incredible. But with Ferrari winning, yeah, it was a nice moment, and it was also nice to have a new winner. I think everyone likes a new winner. Even if you are some Toyota fans, I think they were very much like, you know, kudos to Ferrari for this achievement, which is something that, you know, that sadly there is that tribalism in motorsport these days, where, you know, a new team wins or a new driver wins, they can't really look past it. You know, it was nice to have that bit of camaraderie, which I think is what people enjoy so much about endurance racing.
Yeah, exactly. The mentality is super different in endurance racing than, for example, in Formula One. Past years, it's Formula One wise then got very toxic in terms of fan base, and yeah, in endurance, everyone is just hanging around together, supporting each other, saying congratulations to each other. So that's also something you like,
Exactly.
and which should be the norm, to be honest.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's go back to Peugeot, and especially to the first rain period. We all had our doubts when they revealed their car and we saw they didn't have a back wing. Everyone was a bit making jokes about them and making memes and everything. But they were surprising in the rain. That was because everyone with their back wings, of course, they need to generate downforce from the back wing. But because the Peugeot doesn't have that, they could thrive, since they generate the downforce from under the car. So they were thriving in the rain, they were just going, and that was when they also took the lead of the race for a very long time. Do you think they will be back fighting for the top steps on the podium in the foreseeable future, or?
It's difficult to say. I think this was a very good weekend for them. but at the end of the day, they didn't sustain the lead. So, yeah, they show promise, but obviously there's still a bit to do. And yeah, I think Peugeot can take a lot of positives away from Le Mans, but there's still plenty of work to do. And whether that means a slight change in the aero package, then so be it. Luckily, the next circuit that we're going to is Monza, and that is more a circuit which depends on straight line speed. So that should be a circuit which suits them more, as should Fuji, because Fuji has a very long front straight, so that will suit their car a lot. The problem is when we go back to the twisty circuits like Bahrain, it could be fairly difficult for them. But I think it's definitely the first sign that the Peugeot project is working, and working well, particularly after what had been a fairly terrible start to the season. You know, countless reliability issues, pit lane starts. It looked more like a project which didn't really know its direction. Now it seems to be in the right direction, it's moving forward, and that's positive. I think that's positive for not just Peugeot, but for the sport in general.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say the same, that it will be good for the sport because, yeah, not only it brings more different manufacturers in front, of course, but just also how they designed the car. It's like you get more options and more like, oh, what is gonna work where and what not and everything. So it makes the sport more exciting to watch, I think.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
Besides some small issues, mostly coming after a crash, we didn't see many reliability issues. Although we did. Porsche, they're really losing control of their car and they seem like they just can't figure out their problems. What are your thoughts on this?
Ah, dear. It's another bad race for Porsche. You know, they had a 4-car entry, and only one of them, I believe, finished inside the top 10. Considering how much time they put in testing into that car, they came in with the most miles under their belt. It didn't look that comfortable. Nasser had done some good qualifying laps with the 75, but they were out early, and that was the lead car effectively gone. The 5 and 6 didn't really have the pace to challenge for the podium. The 38 Jota, as I mentioned, made a terrific start with P16, and then once it crashed out, was never really back in the race. It was just constantly hovering near the back of the field. But I think it's a bit of a worry for Porsche, knowing the fact that they had a really difficult Le Mans and they had plenty of issues with the car, and even though the pace was there at times, it wasn't consistent. It wasn't good enough to challenge the Ferraris or the Toyotas or even the Cadillacs. The only positive is that the 38 Jota was very quick, and Costa and Yiffy are going to be a strong combination. And also, I think they raised a good amount of money for charity. I think they did about 733 laps. So that was a positive from what was a fairly terrible weekend, I would say.
Yeah, it feels like they even just made steps backwards instead of forward. So talking about problems, the Glickenhaus, they were crashing a lot, having a lot of issues. They just from the crash to the another issue to another crash. It's terrible. And in my opinion, it's just starting to hurt to watch at this point. Last week I already suggested it, but this was really rock bottom for them in my opinion, and I really think they should just pull the plug from their hypercar program. They just can't afford it anyway, sadly, and then just throwing money to it for being basically nowhere. It's just hurtful to watch.
I think for me, Glickenhaus had a very difficult Le Mans. I think they had a very interesting Le Mans. I wouldn't say it was a terrible Le Mans because, unlike a good chunk of the manufacturers like Porsche, they got all their cars to the finish, and fair enough to them. The car is decent. There is no, for what it's been built on and the fact that the budget is tiny, they're doing a good job. And considering their damage, they still got inside the top 10. But there is that but. It's not going to be. It wasn't as glorious as the podium run last year, but that was expected with the fact there were so many more cars in. Whether, as you say, they can continue, fighting at the front it's difficult really, because of the fact that there's so many more manufacturers coming in, and the budget's going to get higher and higher. I presume we did talk about a budget cap style system being implemented in WEG. You have to wonder, how long can James Glickenhaus really sustain this passion and continue to want to put his own money in when they're not going to fight for top 6 unless something happens. But as I say, both cars made it to the finish, so that's a major positive. And who knows, maybe they could make some money by selling a couple of customer cars. Maybe they do an evolution of this year's car for next year, sell the 2 cars they've got now to a customer. They can maybe make some money out of it and then continue pushing forward to 24-25. There is still definitely life in the Glickenhaus projects. Unfortunately, the other privateer project, Vanwall, had not a good weekend again. Just very, very disappointing.
They were even more terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right what you said about that they finished their cars, which is good. But where do you think the problem is then? Because they can finish, but they just can't seem to be competitive and everything.
I think it's the pace. The pace is the problem. Whether they have to go hybrid, it might be the only solution they have to being competitive, because it's them and the Vanwalls who are normally aspirated, and they're at a massive disadvantage. So they have to look at maybe switching to a hybrid for the next year's car and then seeing what happens. Maybe also maybe making a car that's slightly lighter, because it is quite a wide car if you think about it. It's much more bulky than the Porsche, for example, which looks very much slimmer. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be an easy switch. It's not like Glickenhaus have got factory support and billions of pounds behind them. They've got to use their life, per se. And that means they have to choose wisely, develop it properly, and make sure it works, because if they make a mistake, well, they're not going to get that money back for the start, and then they're going to be massively behind even further behind than they already were. So I think that there's a few bits that Glickenhaus could really fix on, but there is definitely, as I say, there is definitely that support, and there's definitely still a place for them. So I think they can do it, but I don't think you can jump to conclude. I don't think you can immediately fix the problems. It will take maybe half a year to get ready. But then by then, who knows what may be the landscape of sports cars. We may have 10, 15 manufacturers, and Glickenhaus may stick out like a sore thumb compared to everyone else.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone keeps on moving, so it's hard to catch up like that. So yeah, we'll see, I guess. I think they also make GT cars, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they do Yeah, they make road cars, I think. Limited amounts, obviously. I think they're a very specialist type of sports car manufacturer. More like a spiker, or what that was.
Yeah, maybe it's a good idea then for them to just sell more road cars or GT cars, and then they can use that money for development and be better in the hypercar too.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's definitely a good idea to get as much money in as you can.
I guess they probably thought about it themselves too already, but I had wanted to point it out anyway.
It's always a worthwhile suggestion. That's all. I think they would probably appreciate any suggestion. So.
I will send it to them and ask 10% of the money.
Yes, I deserve 5% because I gave you that idea.
So let's talk about the NASCAR's Garage 56. They were a bunch of rock stars, weren't they?
They were excellent. I think everyone liked that project. I don't think there was anyone who was like, oh, well, it was a complete failure. No, I think everyone liked it. The car ran really smoothly. It did close to 300 laps. They would have done 300 laps if they hadn't had the little issue near the end of the race. They were quick. They were quicker than the GT cars. I would say it was a very impressive debut, and to get to the finish was what they wanted to do. So I would say mission accomplished. It was a good way of promoting NASCAR, and yeah, I think most people are going to go away from this weekend with more of a respect for NASCAR, and it's going to be vice versa on their side for Le Mans.
Yeah, they just went all in this project, and it's kind of it gives more respect to them as a whole, motorsport branch, which is nice actually. And if we can go back into what we were talking about last week, then this just was he calling for their own category in at least Le Mans. So
yeah,
I really hope they do that.
Yeah, I definitely can see them potentially doing that. Maybe also inviting other categories to come along, maybe like a TCR style car, perhaps, because that already that similar races in IMSA, in the IMSA Sportster. So I mean, I don't think it'll be the last time.
So they were also quicker even than most of the GT cars. So I don't know if that is a bad sign for GTs, but maybe they can even just integrate it in the GT category.
I think that would be a bit difficult to integrate it, because it would change. You would have to change everything about the GT category, and with the fact GT3 is also coming in next year, you have to really change everything of the regulations, and then you have the worry of maybe losing manufacturers who will say, well, if we're being beaten by NASCAR, why are we doing it? What are we doing here? So
yeah,
I would say more of its own category, like what GT4 was, and then maybe run it alongside GT3. I mean, there's definitely a place for it, but I just don't think it could be doable, moulding into GT3. And I think also there is the idea that maybe it would look a bit odd, if you had Spa 24 Hours, for example, and NASCAR winning, it would look a bit odd, and it wouldn't be a great look for GT3 in general.
Yeah, that's true, but on the other hand, it's also not a very good look if they are still quicker than the GT cars, of course, since GT3 is supposed to be the top of not sports cars, but GT cars at least. So this year's edition gave us a magical finish, with Ferrari putting up a heroic fight and winning after 58 years after their last victory, and after 50 years of being away from the top class of sports car racing. I think I can speak for all of us that this was an emotional victory, the most magical brand in racing history winning this way at the 124 hours of Le Mans. Just goosebumps, if you ask me. I remember the crowd, as I already said, and even the other teams just watching in silence during the last lap, realizing we were witnessing history being made. The respect from everyone, making guards of honors for them. I just can't get over this moment. It's why we love this sport so much, and it made me fall in love with it all over again. I'm also happy for Antonio Giovinazzi being dropped by Ferrari in F1, losing his childhood dream of driving and winning for Ferrari, to now winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans for the same brand. What a legend. Moving forward to Monza, beside it getting sold out probably after Ferrari's win, how do you expect it to be? Back to smooth sailing for Toyota, Ferrari building further on their momentum, another brand, for example Peugeot, going for victory?
I think Monza is going to be very special. It won't be as special as Le Mans, but it's definitely going to be a fun weekend. There's going to be a sellout crowd likely, and it's going to be full of people wearing red and yellow, if you use both Ferrari's colours. I think Ferrari definitely can kick on from Le Mans and go again and win, but they do need to fear Toyota. I think Toyota are going to be strong as well, and Cadillac were very, very reliable and were quick as well. That's another thing that I feel people didn't really talk about. At Le Mans, Cadillac were a very safe pair of hands. Third and fourth, 3 cars at the finish, although the 311 was several laps down. It was a really good result, so they can easily fight at Monza.
For them, it was just very unlucky to always be involved in a crash somehow. For the rest, they were doing fine indeed.
Yeah, so I definitely see it being a three-way fight, but you'd have to say Ferrari are going to have to go in favourites, and again, that sellout crowd may play a little bit of a hand into it.
Yeah, since I'm now a full supporter for Ferrari, I will go with Ferrari.
Yeah, I think
So,
we haven't mentioned LMP2 though. Just quickly while we're on to Monza, Fabio Scherer's drive with a damaged foot.
oh
that
yeah,
that is driver of the day stuff. I mean, he was
definitely.
hobbling on one foot, and he's still. I mean, what a performance! You know, that's the spirit of Le Mans, pretty much for everyone who
Yeah, exactly.
watched the
That's
great.
what Le Mans does to you.
Yeah, he didn't give up. He didn't complain. He just put his foot down, well, one of his feet down, and he just drove a race of his life. And yeah, kudos to him. Kudos to Corvette as well. Ben Keating, another great drive for him, and Corvette win
Yeah.
Le Mans on their final outing for a while. So plenty of feel-good stories down the back of the grid.
Yeah, in terms of GTs, I also want to mention the Iron Dames because they started, what was it, 16th or something?
Yeah,
12th,
so.
16th, I don't know anymore exactly. But yeah, they just fought back and eventually were fighting for the win for a long time. But then they had a brake change, I think it was, which made them lose even the podium. So they became fourth, which was very hard on them, of course.
Yeah, it was hard, but
Yeah.
they had a good race. I think they definitely can't. I don't think they'll be going away from the weekend thinking, well, that was disaster, because P4 is still a good result, but obviously when you're so close to that podium, it will hurt a little bit. So, kudos to Iron Dames putting up a really good fight, and they'll be back.
I think this is a good thing to build on for example, Monza already, but definitely for the rest of the season before they move on to Lamborghini.
Yes.
With all of this being said, I want to end our conversation by saying we had an amazing time. We will have an even more amazing time the coming races. The golden era is at full speed, and last but not least, Ferrari is back.
Quite.
So thank you, Ed, for joining us again.
Pleasure.
Let's do this all over again at Monza. All right,
Sure.
perfect. If you want to keep up with all the news about Pirate Racing Club or follow Ed, then you can find the information about that in the description below. So enjoy the rest of your time, and we will see you back at Monza. Bye.
Bye.